And good afternoon, everyone. It's Lisa Norell. This is a special episode today. I think it's number 34. Can't believe I'm saying that. It's Tuesday, April 27th. And we are in the final days of Earth Month. So we're going to have a great session today for the next 40 minutes. I hope you'll stay with us. I hope you'll also put in the chat where you're from and know that you can post your questions for myself or for our very special guest today, Noah Wilson Rich. So before I introduce him, I got a couple pieces of news. And the first one is that I got my second vaccine. I had some drowsiness yesterday evening and a sore arm. And let's face it, folks, that is a small price to pay to help us move towards herd immunity. So I hope that you have your vaccine scheduled. This public service announcement is brought to you by a woman who believes strongly in science. So with that, let's talk some more about science today. I have a really amazing guest today that I want to talk to you about because we're going to look into how, in honor of Earth Month, where does sustainability play a role in today's organizations? If you're a marketing leader or a CEO, and you've been watching my episodes since last June, you know that nature is my refuge. But it's also more than that. It's our future. And it's up to us to do something about things like bee colony collapse and global warming and climate change. I was shopping this weekend because I needed a little bit of spring clothing refresh. And I found this book sitting in the front of the department store. I never go to department stores, but I went to Uniqlo this weekend. And, you know, I give them kudos because they're giving out a fast retailing sustainability report. Now, granted, this was written, translated from Japanese into English, but I loved the interview with a French gentleman by the name of Jacques Attali, who is a philosopher, economist, and futurologist. And just to set the tone for today's terrific conversation with Noah Wilson Rich, I love what he said. You know, the two executives, the CEO of Fast Retailing was talking with him, and he said, sustainability is in the interests of our next generations. We are the grandparents of all humanity, and we must act like grandparents of humanity yet to be born. In any work, we need to ask ourselves the question, is what we are doing part of the economy of life? So speaking of life, we're going to have a very lively conversation today with Noah Wilson Rich, the CEO and founder of Best Bees, joining us from Massachusetts. Noah, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to see you. We have something in common, don't we?
I think we have a few things in common, but what are you thinking?
Well, we're passionate about bees.
Yes.
We're passionate about nature and the importance of us to care for nature. And we're also both members of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches Community. So it's been really great meeting you through that global community of caring leaders.
Yeah, Lisa, I love that. And to add, if I may, I think that we both seek out inspiration along with education. And then we want to share that with our communities and kind of spread it from the mountaintops. And that's very much in the Marshall Goldsmith legacy, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. It's, I do wake up on my good days, maybe not the day after I got my COVID vaccine, but on most days I wake up and I say, okay, how many people can I help today? How do I get the word out about these important things that I'm learning?
Yeah.
So
where do you get the inspiration from?
Yeah, exactly. It's looking out the window at this wonderful thing known as nature.
Yeah.
You've gotten to work with National Geographic. You graduated from MIT. You have worked with some of the nation's biggest corporations to help them introduce sustainability. Talk to us about what you've learned along the way, and more importantly, just to create a level set, maybe you could define for us what you mean by sustainability in business today.
I love this. All right, so much to dive into. So let's get started. So I went to Tufts for grad school. And before then, I went to Northeastern University. And I got into all of this because of a really amazing teacher. Her name was Becky Rosengaus. She was brand new. And she was kind of this sassy Latina with this energy that she brought to a department that was otherwise kind of all white guys, you know? And I remember thinking, who is she with that energy and life? I want to work for her in her lab. So I said, I don't know what you do, but I want to work for you. You are just amazing. And she said, that's great. I work with termites. And I said, what? And it was termites. And I thought, ugh. And then we had 3 publications together, and she opened up this whole world of nature and the things we can learn from social animals. That's what termites are. And so the more we learned about them, the more I started thinking, they're very successful as a group. What lessons can we learn to be our most successful leaders, to be our best teams? And how do we advance through problems that so often feel original to us, especially business leaders? We're thinking, oh, what are we going to do? But oftentimes nature has already solved this many times over. So through Becky, I started studying bees. And that also continued my perspective on the lessons in leadership from the beehive. And I'd love to dive into with sustainability, but I think you just had a question for me. I was running over.
Yes, I love your origin story. Like, I also find you an adaptable creature, much like termites and bees are. I mean, you were at MIT, and I believe you were studying honeybee immunology.
Yeah. So
and how do you go from honeybees to CEO?
Yeah. Well, listen, the queen bee, everybody knows. And so we already can relate to queen bees and worker bees. And so when I give keynote talks these days, we always think about, are you a queen bee or are you a worker bee on your team? And let's dive into that a little bit more. When we're thinking about leadership and teamwork, it's actually not the queen who has all of the control. You know, anybody who's a CEO or C-level or manager or director, VP, I think deeply understands that if we could just call the shots, if it were that easy, we would be in a different spot. That's not how teamwork goes. And so we can learn from the power of a worker bee, the way that one individual out of tens of thousands is the one who can drive real big change. So that's really inspiring. So I love getting into the details of that. When we think about sustainability in general, I think about circles and what some call the circular economy. We could even think about this in our own individual lives. Whatever we throw out there, it goes somewhere. This was the first paper I remember writing in college about the concept of away. When we throw things away, things come back. Maybe it's even a social person that you keep running into. Sustainability is what we put out there. We understand that it will come back, and we think, how do we allow that to pay dividends? So that's really where the intersection between economic sustainability and ecological sustainability meets with businesses.
Yes. And I love, again, that you were able to shift. By the way, we have Tamika joining us from Maryland today. Tamika is a regular visitor to our live stream. So thank you, Tamika. We are at a really critical moment as a world. And what I'm going to say is going to upset a few people, but oh well. We created the United States out of pioneers and rugged individualism, and I got to get mine, and I'm going to be a tough capitalist, and it isn't serving us so well as it once did, is it? Between what we're seeing in people who think COVID is a political action or, a political issue, not a science issue, and people who don't really care about their fellow person, and they're more worried just about themselves. Yeah. This upsets me. And you've learned different things, though, from observing termites and bees, that maybe this is a chance for us to turn the corner and think differently. What's your take on that?
Lisa, I think that we can all relate. And especially when thinking about the different layers to everything you just said, it's so much more complicated. The founding of America, we think about the indigenous population. And these days we have social justice movements converging with environmental justice movements. And businesses really meet in the middle. There's so much pressure and attention on leaders these days. What are you going to do about it? So many CEOs responding. So what do we do? Well, what I have to add to this conversation is time. So when we think about these problems, we're thinking about right now and what do we do for tomorrow? But when you take a step back and you think about evolutionary time, we see that groups have been around for 100 million years in bees. And so the ways that we can understand how they've solved this and how evolution has really killed off the failures over time, just like businesses, some survive and some fail, we can see Darwinian leadership take the lead in a way. So when you step back and you see what's going to persist and how will that force change the structure of companies and those dynamics, that's an evolutionary or Darwinian perspective. And that's where an evolutionary biologist like me can really change the perspective and help us all move forward.
Yes, and you are the first evolutionary biologist, A, I've ever met, and B, that that has made that bridge. You have jumped the bridge from strictly speaking through the lens of a scientist to bringing it to corporations.
Yeah.
What are some of the early lessons that you try to teach corporations who realize now, based on the Edelman Trust Barometer feedback, that people like us that own businesses trust companies more than we trust the government? This has been proven. Knowing that as kind of a foundation, what are some early steps you take when companies approach you and say, how do we get on the sustainability train? Because it's the right thing to do for society.
Right. Absolutely. Well, there's a few things here. One, it's important to acknowledge that sustainability is the new mandate for businesses. We're shifting to a green economy, whether you like it or not. And the idea is not to leave anybody behind, but it's to create jobs and opportunities and economic growth and new types of leadership here that are very different from before. It's the evolution of business. And so when we look at how a group can change to be updated, let's say, a lesson we can take from the beehive is that amongst tens of thousands of worker bees, it only takes 5% of them to reach a consensus that then drives change across the organization. And what this means for leaders today is that you don't have to go to the middle and change everybody's perspectives, but you get a small percentage of your total group to agree that this is the right thing to do. And then those are the ones that drive change in very similar ways to how bees do it. Bees are a lot more fun. They dance and they'll move to a new home or forage somewhere, different problems, but the same concepts. So the last step here is to make sure to select those first leaders correctly. So with businesses here, we're talking about who's in charge of sustainability. Let's get somebody there if there's nobody there yet. What about environmental and social governance, that ESG goals? What about other corporate social responsibility people? Can we get to the table? And that's how you start to recruit other people until you get between 5 and 25%. And that's how you can drive change in a large organization to stay competitive.
Yes. So really, you are a change agent first and a scientist second.
Yeah, I think
you're touching on that.
My own change. I've been the CEO of the Best Bees Company for 11 years now. It's the nation's leading beekeeping service. So we install and manage beehives for large companies on formerly empty rooftops or grounds. And what this does, it allows me to move beyond the talk. So with my keynotes, I think it really matches with what a lot of employees and community members are demanding. Go beyond the talk. Otherwise, you're greenwashing. Or even if you're pandering to our BIPOC community, thinking about blackwashing, thinking about rainbow washing when you're talking about LGBT community members as well. We have to go beyond all of this. This is what is the new mandate for companies. So by putting a beehive on campus, it says to the attendees and everybody thinking about bees as a leadership inspiration source, wow, I can look at that beehive and remember what we talked about. And then when you taste honey coming from a company's beehive, they think, I remember the leadership lessons here. So you're building community around sustainability in a really unique way.
That's great. And one of the other sources of honey that fuels our economy is money. Honey and money. And I'm starting to see some very optimistic signs that people with money are getting behind what you're doing. Not sure if you have encountered or met with an investment firm that's run by Jacqueline Novogratz, CEO of Acumen.
Yeah.
So I just want to pause and let people know that we're seeing people move away from ideas or, beehives into fueling companies, funding companies that are committed to sustainability and solving some of the world's biggest problems. Mm-hmm. So I've never met Jacqueline Novogratz, but I'm sending her a shout out because she and her team have invested tens of millions of dollars in companies that are as passionate about sustainability as we are.
It is the future. It is the current mandate. And for me, it's so inspiring. And this is where I think you and I coming together to educate everybody. It brings people in. Jacqueline Novogratz has been an inspiration to me personally and professionally because her husband, Chris Anderson, is the founder of TED. And the TED organization, it's all coming together.
Oh my gosh.
So
the world is so small.
It is small. And Lisa, when you and I connect offline here, we always think about what our personal life, how are we doing? I love that connection about you. You are one of those people, just like with Jacqueline, who can walk the walk. You're living your best life in business and at home. You're maintaining common values, and you're really building community around it. So for Best Bees, we just started our first investment round. We've never done fundraising before. And so this is really exciting for us. It's been a better than expected response. And I think this is because people know that this is the future, just like with the current US government now moving towards more green practices. It's an opportunity for everybody to take part. It's not you're going to be left behind, because we're making sure to bring everybody with us. And that's why my life's work, going around talking, whether it's on the TED stage or in keynotes or with investors, that's what gives me energy. I'll add one other thing, Lisa, too. We're seeing data that are supporting spending habits, thinking about that honey money, so to speak. So one recent article coming from Forbes and Sustainable Brands provided some data that I found just so inspiring here. So one is that 63% of purchasing goes towards brands that are sustainable. This is something that we're seeing money go towards already, which is driving why business sustainability is the new mandate. 88% of consumers want brands to help them live a more sustainable life. And 25% of consumers can name a brand just based on their sustainability reputation. So these are things that really should drive that change and help us learn how we can all be part of this and nobody be left behind.
Yeah, those numbers are compelling, aren't they?
Really, very much so.
And I want to close that circle and also mention to people, you have a very successful TED Talk that people can also enjoy to kind of educate them on some of the change that you are leading at Best Bees and beyond. We have a question from Tamika that I thought we might want to address. So in the world of learning and development and change management, consensus and buy-in are paramount. Amen to that. How can she convince clients that 5% consensus is enough to move forward?
I know, this is amazing. So Tamika, thanks for asking. And when we look at the data, so, as Lisa, you shared, I'm a scientist affiliated with MIT since 2015, doing great projects using bees as a study tool. We can understand that in large groups across nature, there's that 5% threshold. And one good book for reading there is called Honeybee Democracy by Thomas Seeley. Not to assign your reading here, but if you're more of a podcast listener, this concept was recently applied in Hidden Brain, which is a podcast that I love by Shankar Vedantam, the host. And the episode was called The Snowball Effect, which applied this concept to humans. And he discussed the threshold is really 25% for human societies. You need to have 25% of people before you can drive a movement, before you can make real change. Many leaders commonly have a misconception that you have to convince 100% of people. Everybody's got to be on board, or that it's zero and I'm going to do it alone. And again, I can relate as a CEO myself. But when we see this, it's also relating to something that gave me inspiration called the blue ocean effect. Do you remember this, Lisa? Thinking about
by Renee Moburn and the blue ocean strategy of creating a new market entirely.
Yeah, and how to make your competitors irrelevant. Instead of fighting in the red ocean with blood in the water, turn around and swim out to sea. You change it up. And so when we're thinking about strategies like this, that really requires not focusing on that middle of the bell curve of the population of a group, but focus on the ends, drive those changes to become a trend, to become a movement, to drive real change. So consider that podcast or that book, or hire me for a keynote. We can talk all of the time about this.
Yes, and creating that movement. And
Yeah.
that gives me a lot of hope, not to go off on a tangent about COVID vaccinations in the United States, but I believe they said 29% of Americans have gotten vaccinated so far. Mm-hmm. At least that was this morning. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel so terribly hearing that, 25% is enough to start a pattern or a movement.
Yeah.
Versus 72% herd immunity. So that gives me some real strong encouragement.
Yeah. And, when we draw comparisons in the natural world, when we're thinking about lessons in leadership, how to drive change and other solutions, we have to not anthropomorphize bees, not give them human traits, not think everything is the same or so simple. So, of course, we acknowledge, vaccinations with individual liberties, that comes up against a group dynamic in a way that is a bit different from business. But I think one thing my current research looks at is with voting. Whenever you want to have a candidate or an issue on the ballot, I look at what percentage of the population requires signatures. So is it 5% or 25%? That would be the range of my hypothesis. So far, the data show it's about 12.5%. So we are seeing a common thread here that really relates to Tamika's question. How do we know what percent of our population do we need to convince or validate in order to drive change? It's an important question. We all struggle with it.
Right. Yes, it's and it's definitely not a one size fits all, recipe. There's no recipe book for it. And it's, Tamika, we really hope that this was helpful for you in getting some clarity that, 5% is a good start. One last thing I want to share with Tamika. Thank you for those Instagram photos. Oh my goodness, just beautiful. Those bees. Oh,
that's the rocket ship we sent bees on with MIT. So that publication will be out any day now. I mean, so much fun stuff. And a National Geographic paper was from our client sites. Each beehive is a NASA and Nat Geo data point that helps advance our mission to save the bees. So it's really a citizen science or business science initiative that has been fun to include actually in sustainability reporting. So a lot of great opportunities there.
Yes, I agree. And it's just so inspiring. One other thing I want to share with you, Tamika. Yes, there's some real benefits here of installing beehives and supporting the best bees. I had no idea bees create 1 out of 3 bites of the food we rely on. And, over 100 fruits and vegetables are pollinated by honeybees. I mean, I have to ask a rather naive question. Why would a company not install beehives?
That's a fun spin to it. I love this. So there's a lot of misinformation about nature in general. And we see in Europe, companies are much more advanced. So one of our clients is EMD Serono. They're owned by Merck in Germany. They really embrace a concept called biophilia, where they encourage their bosses and their reports to take a walk for a meeting and go sit on a rock by a beehive with flowers. To be immersed in nature, I know sounds crunchy and silly, but it advances productivity. It helps teamwork. It inspires people in ways that are just not compatible with this old pre-COVID world of cubicles and standard business. It's a new world. And so when we can embrace nature with facts, then we inspire and educate people in a community-based way. And that's what it's all about, bringing people into it, whether it's just tasting the honey with a corporate label on it and a QR code that says, hey, go to this website to learn more about this company's sustainability. Or if it's just listening and talking and having events together. This is something that we see really helps battle the misinformation when people think bees are all scary and going to attack. I say that's a bad business model. Nobody is doing that. Our bees are vegan. They only go to flowers and back. They're not wasps or hornets or yellow jackets. This is like butterflies. This is what we want to promote so that we can feed our children. That's really what bees mean to everybody. If we want food for the next generation, we need to save our pollinators, and bees are the best ones, arguably.
I love what Tamika is saying because she and I share this in common. She's saying that with her clients, she is actually doing walking meetings. Yeah. So I say kudos. I do the same with clients, either when they come and visit Northern Virginia or for those who live in the DC area. And we get out on the trails and we pause when we see something interesting. Usually we're, we encounter something, a group of deer or jackrabbit or something along the way. And it really helps us kind of get more grounded and connected as a result.
Not everybody lives in beautiful Virginia, unfortunately. I love it down there. And our DC, Maryland, Virginia beekeeping team, they are so fun. One of the things that is a limitation for most companies, I think, is they don't have this space. They're not as lucky as the two of us might be when we can take a walk. So what I like to tell those companies is look up. What is on your rooftop? Have you thought about it before? Could you have a pollinator habitat garden, an amenity deck up there? Could you have, if it's an apartment building, could you grow carrots up there for families? That's sales and marketing. That's getting people into your building to help the leasing based on sustainability and building community with an underutilized asset that really helps move the needle on things like climate change, just like this.
Right. Look at the rooftop there, the perfect location for the beehives.
Yeah.
That's great.
My vision is that we're not going to have empty rooftops anymore. I think we can all agree on that at some point in the future. So as a futurist, as an entrepreneur and scientist, I love working with you, Lisa, with other marketers, because you're imaginative and you can see where we're going. And so you help tell that story to get everybody's buy-in.
Yes, we are agents of change. And again, shifting from this rugged individualism to this collective we is, this is the time in our society, in our history, to make a difference in so many aspects. I also, before I share a comment from Richard in York, England, I just love that Richard was able to join us. Let's see what he has to say. He says, in France, they have introduced laws that encourage large rooftops to be covered in plants for insulation, but also for cooling industrial areas. Political will. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the UK has been really at the forefront of this, as is Germany, many other countries in Europe. With the United States, we are seeing movements now so that we're using our rooftops. Urban beekeeping started in France. Did you know this, Lisa? It started in Paris.
C'est magnifique.
Yeah, at the rooftop of the Opera House. And that's where, I believe it was in 1987, beehives were first placed. And now it's totally taken off to the point of having laws that say, we got to do this. Pollinator habitats on rooftops insulate buildings, and that lowers their operating costs, their HVAC, the heating and AC. That also reduces water runoff during storms to prevent flooding. That also provides food. And exactly. So this is not only my dream and my vision, but an actual client site. You can tell it's in Chicago here with the Willis Tower, and it's got 3 beehives. Beehives are the first step because they just take a 2x3 foot space. You don't have to start with an entire green rooftop if you want to do something to leverage that underutilized asset. So start with beehives, then get some flowers, and then you can also measure how it's over 40 degrees cooler on a green rooftop compared to its next door non-green rooftop. So that mitigates climate change as well.
Great. We have another question from Ariana Brandau. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Ariana. Are there companies you recommend to learn more about transforming a rooftop space, or is that something that they could also receive from Best Bees, Noah?
Definitely. So reach out to us, bestbees.com, with these questions. This is my vision. This is what we work towards across 14 cities and counting. So we create jobs for beekeepers and for rooftop gardeners. We've got over 70 on staff combined now nationwide. And this helps us build a network so that it's no longer just individuals who are doing beekeeping in their own communities, but now it's a network. So if you call, me, I'm based at our headquarters in Boston. We can answer questions and connect with beekeepers and with rooftop gardeners all around the West Coast. We can also do this around the world because we're building that network. So definitely feel welcome to reach out to us. We can connect you with others who we know. And of course, online, it's a great community.
Oh, that's terrific. And I also want to ask, let's bring this down into some daily behaviors and habits that you cultivate at Best Bees.
Yes.
All the people that are participating today and the hundreds that will watch the live stream replay run companies, run marketing. They help build the voice of the customer, and they communicate regularly with stakeholders. Talk to us about what you do at Best Bees from a marketing perspective that you have found that works really effectively at building consensus or building the movement.
I love this. So Lisa, to be honest, maybe 3 years ago, I did not know what marketing was. I can laugh now because we survived. It's that weird kind of a laugh, like when you're brushing your shoulders off, like, okay, we made it. Evolution didn't pick us off yet. And I think it's because we adapted. We brought in a consultant, or her name is Shelly Steigerwald. She's amazing. And she met with us and did an analysis of our marketing assets that we already had, unbeknownst to ourselves. And then she gave us a report and a recommendation, and she's with us today. And now we've built out a wonderful marketing team. So it's led by Paige Mulhern, who is an artist and an illustrator and a creative director as her background. So we have a really unique approach that values art and communication alongside our science, because that's our brand, scientific beekeeping. So we wanted to balance it with the arts. And when we're communicating in our marketing efforts, whether it's webinars, we've got a newsletter, we have an amazing blog with Donald Vincent based in LA, who helps us write that. Brittany Schmuss, who's in Denver, who leads our social media. It's a young team. They are idyllic. They think a lot about the future and what they want the world to look like, and then they promote it. So we have a wonderfully diverse team. I think we might have at least 10 out of our 70 employees on the LGBT spectrum. We are over 50% women. We have maybe 40% of our regions led by people over the age of 50, so ageism. We are really focused now on opportunities for our BIPOC community. Black, Indigenous people of color have been marginalized and not really included when we're doing urban farming. This is farming where most people live. And so that's really the focus with our nonprofit called the Urban Beekeeping Lab. We're looking into a fellowship program that will provide a little funding for people who want to do projects with bees and then help them get published on our blog. So we're thinking about this all the time, and we share this with our marketing exactly as you see here. So this is Nola on the left and Sam on the right. They started as interns with us. And so we try to create a professional development pipeline that not only helps with our employees and their professional development, but we share them in our marketing too.
And there's that dashing, handsome man there on the left.
On the right.
So
that's my business partner, Cahill, who is amazing and has taught me so much.
what do you think what aspect of marketing and messaging are you most excited about as we all prepare to evolve and emerge from this COVID world?
Yeah, it's authenticity, Lisa. I mean, really, consumers, not only, as we mentioned, the data are putting their money towards these businesses, but they can tell, exactly as you started to share before, about trust. So when consumers value trust and authenticity and companies doing the action to go beyond the talk, that's why my keynotes always match up with getting beehives in addition to just talking about the lessons in leadership. That's what the demands are. And that's what I think the leaders are really going to understand, what's going to make the winners versus the losers.
Yes. It used to be cool to be authentic, and now it is an imperative.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I
mean, it's like the BS meters are so strong that people they won't put up with it. They just won't put up with it.
What's your advice for companies that are looking to build the trust, especially around something that consumers value so much like sustainability? What do you tell them to do?
Well, I always, well, since I'm a coach, I never tell them what to do, but I will say, well, if I were in your shoes, I might look at number one, living, as a wise Indian man once said, be the change you wish to see in the world. Show people what you're doing to live a more holistic or sustainable lifestyle. If you've got a matching set of jet skis and you drive a Hummer, chances are that you're not going to get much attention from your stakeholders. And so I look at, how do people live their lives? We used to have personal lives and business lives, and we just have a life now thanks to working from home and seeing people in their natural habitats.
There you go. Absolutely.
Right. So that's the first thing is, be the change you wish to see in the world. Yeah. You'll notice like when in my social feeds, I make it very clear to people, I believe in science. I do not see COVID as a political statement. I see it as a pandemic. And I made it very clear yesterday. I notified all of my followers on Facebook, hey, I got vaccinated and I'm standing here. I'm alive and well. Yeah. So because I want people to believe in science and take good care of themselves and care for people around them. Because who cares about our software or our technology or whatever solution we're selling if we don't have healthy people to enjoy what we're marketing and selling?
Yeah, that's really resonant. Something else that you said earlier really stuck with me when you're thinking about that. You had said, I'm the first evolutionary biologist that you've met. And that struck me because, that's been my world. I'm surrounded by these people. But thinking maybe that's because of the time, maybe because, science is back, as people have been saying. Maybe the time is ripe for this perspective on business. Let's bring it back in. And it's part of why that TED platform has been so helpful. I need to better communicate how science can help inform us and inspire and educate and build community. That's what I see as my own mandate. And so whether it's on the TED stage, almost 3 million views there, I've got a couple talks people can check out, whether it's through talking with you, which brings me so much joy, Lisa, and our group with Marshall.
Thank you.
I have worked.
I feel the same.
Yeah, because this is truth. Science equals truth. Underlying truth that it doesn't matter what we think about it. This is what is there. And so nature holds these secrets that it's almost like, if you remember Mario or video games, you could like hit a question mark box and get a coin. That's what bees can show us. A beehive shows us leadership and communication and change and how to communicate with enthusiasm to share an idea and how to get others to validate that idea, reach a consensus, and then drive that change. It's all in this little box. So if only we unleash it, I think that this time right now is so ripe for these conversations.
Most definitely. So I really encourage everyone watching here to go to the Best Bees website, find out how you can get involved, talk to your employer about, with people returning to work, what better way to welcome, even if it's a portion of your workforce coming back to work, what better way than to say, we know you've gotten closer to nature during COVID. You've been able to go outside and start to appreciate your surroundings and get out of your 2-hour daily commute. Let's bring some of Mother Earth to the office and let's do something to address colony collapse disorder and to help bring this world back into some form of balance.
That is beautifully said.
I thank you so much for being with us today, Noah. People know how to find you. And I look forward to having you come back and join us for another show. We also have, in closing, Tim joined us today from Pennsylvania. And I know we're going to have a lot of people watching the replay as well. Awesome. So anyway, stay healthy up there in Cambridge. And I know I'll be seeing you next week again in our Marshall Goldsmith meetings. Be
Lisa,
well and thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
The feeling is mutual. So I hope we've gotten some buzz started in your mind today about why we need to protect and cultivate our bees, how we can bring Mother Earth into our daily work lives, and how we can shift our mindset from rugged individualism to the collective good. Isn't that really what sustainability is all about? So we've reached our time together, our bewitching hour. Just to let you guys know, I will be off the grid for a while, and I'll let you know more when I get back. But our next session, our next Mindful Marketer live stream will be held on May 14th. I'll be hosting another topic that I love to talk about, which is how do you build your personal power through building powerful networks. So if bees can create great colonies, how are you going to create a colony during COVID and after COVID that helps you produce honey and also a little money? So Bruce Turkel and I, old friends, we're going to share with you our journey of building networks, what works, what doesn't, how to join a professional network, and how to really amplify your influence and build a healthy, sustainable career. So all I will say is wear your mask, get vaccinated, stay physically distant, get outside, take a walkabout with your favorite loved ones and clients, and I will see you on May 14th.